Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's career conversation, specifically for Willamette University Sustainability Network, otherwise known as WUSN. My name is Sarah Cohen. I am an assistant director on the Alumni Community Engagement team, and I appreciate all of us joining this evening. So this program is designed for current students and young alums to connect with other alumni in the community in sustainability-oriented careers. And I cannot wait for you to meet our lovely panelists for this evening. So during our presentation portion, please make sure your mics are muted. You can turn your cameras off as well if you like. But other than that, I'm going to introduce our host for this evening, Victoria Binning. Victoria is the Water Quality Initiatives Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. She's an environmental science alum from the College of Arts and Sciences class of 2014 and is an unabashed lover of rural Oregon trivia and two-time AmeriCorps alum. She was so inspired by her time at Xena Farm that she's been working in food systems and agriculture since graduation. Victoria is also a leader and key organizer for the Alumni Affinity Group, Willamette University Sustainability Network. Victoria, thank you for hosting this evening, and I will make sure to pull up your slides as well for yourself and the rest of the panelists momentarily.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Happy Women's History Month. I'm really excited to facilitate this panel this evening, or in Diana's case, this morning. You'll hear more about that later. In honor of Women's History Month and to showcase some of the amazing alumni that have graduated from Willamette University and the things that they're doing with regards to sustainability. I think sustainability continues to be of utmost importance, and the way we can highlight and celebrate those bear cats among us who are doing great things for sustainability, the more the better. I do want to give a quick shout out to just three notable female alums from Willamette University in honor of Women's History Month before we get going. And like to point out that Willamette University's first graduate was a woman named Emily York. So we've been pro alumni from the very beginning. She graduated from Willamette in 1859. And because she was the first and only graduate, she was also valedictorian. We also, Norma Paulus was a graduate of Willamette University and became Oregon's first Secretary of State. And a fun recent one, Elizabeth Heaston became the first female to play in a collegiate football game. She was a soccer player for Willamette University, and she was asked to be the kicker for the male football team when he was out sick. And so she became the first woman to play football. Hooray! In any case, those are just three notable female alums. And the folks that we have here today are even more magnificent, and I'm excited to introduce you to them. Penny Becker, unfortunately, is unable to join us this evening, but we are joined by Diana Ibarra, Kendra Schaffer, and more Gratz-Weiser, and I'm excited for you to hear more about their stories in just a moment. But do, as we continue this conversation, consider your own positionality and how we can all gain inspiration from our women alumni in this in our current climate. So as Sarah mentioned, this event is hosted by the Willamette University Sustainability Network. And our network is an affinity group of Willamette graduates, staff, faculty, and current students who are interested in sustainability-related issues or who work in sustainability-related fields. Many of the alumni engage primarily to build connections, share resources, and advocate for change. And anyone who's interested in participating at any level is invited to join our network. If you want to join, we are on LinkedIn under the group name Willamette University Sustainability Network. And I'm hoping Eric is going to drop that into the chat, or maybe he just did. He just did. Way to go, Eric. A+. And so I encourage you to follow that link, join us on LinkedIn, and share, get connected to the wonderful network of alumni who are out there who are interested in being connected with you. And as we go through our introductions for our panelists here in just a moment, I'm going to encourage you all who are listening to be thinking of some juicy questions for our panelists during their introductions. I'm going to be asking you for those questions after we do the intros. This panel is really for you, and the best way to get the most out of it is to ask questions that you want answers to. So you've been warned, and I encourage you to dream up what it is you want to know about our lovely panelists. So we're going to go down the line, Diana, Kendra, and then Morgan. And Diana, we'll start with you. I would love for you to introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your year, and your title. Give us an overview of your career trajectory, and any other information from your slide that you'd like to share with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning from Hong Kong. I am Diana Ibarra, and I have a Bachelor of Arts in chemistry from Willamette University. Some fabulous faculty were a part of the chemistry team when I was there. I actually affiliate with the class of 82 because I started in 1978 as a freshman at Willamette. I'm originally from Montana, and I've lived overseas for over 30 years of my life. But I'm a BA 83 because I was a part of the 3-2 engineering program that Willamette has with a number of engineering schools throughout the United States. So right now, I think that program is with St. Louis, Washington U in St. Louis, and Columbia. There may be a couple of others. When I was at Willamette University, we also had that program with Stanford. So the year that I went out to Stanford, there was 4 of us that went, and 3 males, and then I was the female that was at Stanford doing the engineering there. So my career, age and stage, sage on the stage, is I started out as a semiconductor engineer. I worked in the Netherlands and Germany. I was a management consultant for a number of years, and then I took 20 years out to raise my kids. And I came back to Hong Kong, having lived here earlier, and joined a school called the ISF Academy, which is a pre-K through 12 bilingual school in Hong Kong, and we have about 2,600 students. So as one of the directors of the school, I have one of my responsibilities as the director of the school is I have responsibility for all of the sustainability initiatives on the campus. And so I came to that. Part of that was in my 50s, I went back and I did a second master's degree in environmental engineering. And then when I came back out to Hong Kong, I've been at ISF Academy for 13 years. I said to the school, it's imperative that we get on the sustainability journey. So, I've had lots of careers. The photo of me there is with my 3-year-old granddaughter, and we got to take her skiing for the first time in Stowe, Vermont for Christmas.
I love that. Thank you for sharing little grandbaby photos with us. And for sharing such a concise trajectory of how you went from Willamette to where you are now. How does one get to Hong Kong? So thank you, Diana. We'll go next to Kendra Schaffer. And Kendra, same prompt. I'd love for you to introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, class year, what you do now, and a brief overview of your career trajectory.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Kendra Schaffer, she, her pronouns. Graduated from Willamette with a bachelor's degree in anthropology in 2013. Highlights of my career. I was part of the Kaneko Community Partnership Committee. That was a group of students in the Kaneko Commons dorm rooms that started a volunteerism committee in the Salem community. I worked at the bistro. I was a barista at the bistro for 3.5 years. And I also participated in TAB, which is the service learning programs during spring break that WU does. I studied abroad in Morocco. I ran cross country for 3 years. And I am also minored in Spanish. I guess a brief overview of where I got today. I my first career post-college really stemmed from my experience in service learning with TAB and working at the bistro. I did a lot of service learning projects. I did like 8 weeks of trips in New Orleans for high schoolers. I then had a job over at the Ag Box working with disadvantaged youth and doing volunteerism and service learning with their cohort of students over at the Ag Box, and also was a barista there for 2 years. And then thought that I wanted to go into social work and therapy, and so attempted to go to grad school. And when that didn't go according to plan, worked for a county in rural Colorado for a little while. Then got a job in Klamath Falls, Oregon at a residential therapy program, which is, and I was there for about 3 years doing on-the-floor work with students ages 18 to 24, and then became their adventure coordinator. So led all of and was in charge of all of their like outdoor adventure trips, from like going to the beach to Glacier National Park, and like week-long trips to outdoorsy areas and state national parks in that way. And then led a group of 8 students to a month-long trip to Cambodia for service learning. I'm currently still in Klamath Falls, but then kind of wanted to change directions when COVID hit, and went into a grad program for sustainable tourism. So studied for a year, learning about sustainable tourism practices and what that looks like, and spent some time in Costa Rica applying that education into real life circumstances. And now I currently work with a nonprofit out of Eugene called Rural Development Initiatives. I'm their policy and networks manager. I started out as a communication and marketing coordinator for them, and it's been 2.5 years now, and now I've taken on this role in rural policy and systems change, which has been a really interesting and exciting learning experience. I get to do a lot of policy advocacy education and teaching people in rural spaces in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho how to advocate for the changes that they want to see a more sustainable lifestyle in rural places. Anything else, Victoria? Did I miss anything?
You did great. Wonderful job. I will add that because I am also a lover of rural spaces, that working with rural communities is often, in my mind, working with those who are on the front lines of climate change. So many rural communities are natural resource dependent economies and also are experiencing the impacts of climate change much sooner than maybe their urban counterparts. So if anyone's wondering, how is rural policy connected to sustainability? It's very connected. Thank you so much for that, Kendra, and I appreciate your sharing your journey. Okay, we'll go to Morgan next. Morgan, same prompt. Please give us your name, pronouns, class year, job title, and how you got from WU to the rest of your career trajectory.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Morgan Gratz-Weiser, she, her. Bachelor's in 2013 in environmental science with a minor in geography. And let's see, some definite highlights from being at Willamette. I think it was a great choice in terms of having a relatively small campus community and getting to know a lot of professors. So I think a highlight I probably didn't put on the slide that I should have was just like getting to know and work with a number of professors pretty closely, and that those connections I think were really helpful just as time went on, and we're able to get a few different have good folks as good references, and just still be in touch. So I had a number of good classes. I worked at the library all 4 years. I was part of the campus sustainability club. I also did a TAB spring break trip, maybe 2. Those were super great. And then I played intramural sports throughout college. So that was super fun. I never worked at the bistro, but I ate a lot of bistro cookies. And I actually still eat a lot of bistro cookies because much of my time is spent across the street. So I'm still grateful for the bistro. By way of career, I finished in 2013. I worked for a little while back in my hometown, and then actually got a job back at Willamette, working for a couple of the departments as an administrative assistant, which was a great way to just stabilize for a minute. I moved to Portland and volunteered my way into a job with the Oregon chapter of the Sierra Club back in 2014. Coming out of Willamette, I really wanted to lean in on something environmental policy related. I wasn't quite sure what, just holding broad interests. And so just started connecting. And yes, shout out to Seisha. I saw you there. I got to work with Seisha while I was there at Sierra Club. And it was great. And I was able to kind of volunteer my way into a short-term job. And when that was wrapping up, I started a program at Lewis and Clark Law School. They have a master's of Studies of Law, which is a one-year abbreviated program, which is not a full law degree, but it was a year of law classes, which was really fascinating. And I was able to focus on natural resource and environment law classes, and have an MSL credential for what that's worth. After that, I got a job working in the state legislature and as a staff to a state senator. And that was really, I needed a job, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do other than I had this degree and I wanted to do more policy work of some sort. And this was a good way to get to know the government and policy system and meet people. And so I will say this many times throughout, but networking and getting to know people is the name of the game that I have learned over the years. And asking questions. So I worked in the legislature for one state senator for about a year and a half, and then in the Senate Majority Office as a policy advisor for another year. And that was pretty broad topic-wise. I did cover the Environment and Natural Resource legislative committees, but I also covered education and human services and other stuff. And I really wanted to focus back into environmental policy, and was able to land a job with Oregon Environmental Council, which is a statewide nonprofit doing a range of water, climate, clean energy, and some clean transportation policy work. And so I worked there for 3 years doing their legislative advocacy. And so I got to work with the policy team and be our voice in the Capitol and with the state legislature, which was awesome. And I really, really loved that job. And then I got pulled into Governor Brown's team for about the last year and a half of her administration doing environment and natural resource policy work. And I will actually say that this picture was from a trip we got to take with Governor Brown out into the Wallowa Mountains on a field trip out there, looking at a project that was doing a really great kind of land conservation project between the Department of Fish and Wildlife and local landowners to do elk and habitat restoration. And it was just fun to get her out there. And then I was able to join Governor Kotek's team, and a bit of a shift in focus. I am now Deputy Legislative Director, which is a broader portfolio. I work with our Environment and Natural Resource Advisor team. I also work with our Health and Human Services, Transportation, and Education folks. So I'm back to being a little more broad scoped. But I would say it's actually quite helpful across the board just to have a landscape lens on all the different pushes and pulls on our state budget, on communities, and how we are able to help serve Oregonians. So that's the short bit on what my life has been. I spend a lot of time in the state capitol. Comically, I never did a Capitol internship, or I think I maybe stepped into the Capitol once, maybe twice at my whole time at Willamette. And it wasn't until a couple of years later when I realized that lots of cool policymaking is happening right there. So that's been really fun. Yeah, happy to answer questions or share any more details.
Thank you so much for that, Morgan. And I can definitely resonate with the idea. I don't spend a lot of time in the Capitol, but I am a state worker now. And it is so, I never thought I would do that as an undergrad, but here we are. Right? Like, oh, well, probably should have put those pieces together, speaking for myself. But I love just hearing your narrative, how it's seemingly that you had this core value of wanting to work on environmental issues, and that just kept you coming back and looking at it a different way and getting that law degree and coming back and looking at it another way. So I really appreciate that commitment to value, not necessarily knowing what the end goal might be. And who knows? I don't think you're there. We're always still growing and changing, right?
One thing I will say that has been just helpful, and I think this probably translates beyond just state government, but working for many different angles on an issue, working in the legislature, working for an advocacy group, and then working in the governor's office. It's similar issue areas, oftentimes the same issue area, but looking at it and working at it from different angles is always really helpful, and would encourage that for anyone.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Well, I have been asked to go back to my slide and do an intro for myself. So we're going to finish this one out in case anyone has sustainable agriculture questions. I'm happy to provide my own insight if that's of interest to anyone. To answer my own questions, Victoria Binning, she, her pronouns, graduated in class 2014 with an environmental science degree from Willamette. I thought I was going to be an English major, but took my freshman colloquium on America's dysfunctional food system, and that changed my life forever. And I went into sustainable agriculture because, as someone who was really interested in sustainability, thinking about the sustainability of food completely changed how I was thinking about it. You know, carbon emissions in the sky and greenhouse gases was really hard for me to grasp onto as a high school student, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But once I started thinking about it through the lens of food, through nutrients that we're putting into our body every day, and the vast impact that the food system can have on water, air, soil, sustainable infrastructure, energy, like all the nexus points of agriculture, that really helped me figure out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. Didn't hurt that Xena Farm was thriving while I was an undergrad. So I got to spend 2 summers at the Xena Institute for Sustainable Agriculture, and that was incredible. Following Willamette, I did 2 years of AmeriCorps, which helped me gain confidence in my skills and gain a whole lot of credibility and gain a lot of experiences, figure out what I like, what I didn't like, and built my network, kind of like what Morgan was saying, helped me build that network of people who are in my corner and said, you could totally get this job. You should apply for it. And found myself working for OSU Extension as a small farms extension agent, and leveraging that to run a rural capacity building program through the University of Oregon, to my current position, which is in water quality at the Oregon Department of Agriculture. We protect water resources, and encourage more sustainable practices from farmers and ranchers to protect water quality for fish, for drinking water, for recreation. And I think regularly that I should have paid more attention during Professor Erebus's water resources class. But I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to take that class as an undergrad, and I'm regularly impressed at how the critical thinking skills that people talk about during undergrad, during a Willamette degree, that don't seem to serve you very well in the first 3 years, now are the most important thing that I bring to the table. And regularly, I'm encouraging folks that I work with to think outside of the box, or think about it from this angle, or like, what if we bring in this other agency? And having that critical thinking that's baked into the Willamette pie is so helpful for the work that I do now in promoting clean water. So that's my little intro. If anyone wants to ask questions about sustainable agriculture when we get into it. But this is the point where we get to have a little Q&A with our panelists and hear a little more from them. I did warn you, I'm going to ask you for questions. I do have one ready in case no one is prepped, but I want to turn it over to our attendees. Does anyone have a burning question they would love to ask our panelists? Okay. Hearing none, I will provide the first one, and then it's back to you all. So a lot of a big part of why we do these panels is to provide inspiration to folks who are early career or looking at graduation. And one of the things that I love to ask panelists is, if you were to think back to when you were a Willamette undergrad student, or however you experienced Willamette, what advice would you have for your former self to get to where you are now, or maybe a different trajectory? What advice would you have for yourself or a current undergrad student?
I'm happy to just jump
in. Yeah, we don't have to go in order.
I mean, the piece that I will always go with is reaching out and connecting with people and networking and pushing through the awkwardness of cold emailing somebody to say, hey, I came across your LinkedIn, or I came across your profile, or someone told me about you and I'd love to hear more about what you do. And I did a lot of that, and can be awkward, but also you learn a lot. And you learn a lot about the jobs that you think are cool that maybe aren't what you want. And then you also learn about the things that you're like, oh, that is really fascinating, or that's actually what you do with that job title. Who knew? So I will always stand the networking. I think the other piece that I didn't do as much, but I wish I had hustled a little bit more junior and senior year to figure out some neat summer internships, or just more connection early on, and more kind of on the job training opportunities earlier on. That said, it's also really important to take some time and rest in between years.
Yeah. Thank you for kicking us off there, Morgan. Kendra or Diana, do you have thoughts, advice you would give?
I think if I think back on my time at Willamette, and then what I did was, my US-based home is in Montana. And so I would go back to Montana summers, and had the opportunity of working in a soil and water lab every summer that I was in between university. So I did 4 summers as a water and soil chemist, running environmental testing. And I knew then that I was going to stay interested in water and in soil science. So when I got to Stanford and I did chemical engineering, all of the graduate level courses that I could take at Stanford that were in the environmental engineering department or under the civil engineering were always the water classes. And I liked those better than I did my chemical engineering courses. So and then I, long story, worked in Europe, had a couple kids. And when I started at Montana State University, again, I started really low key. I had 2 little boys at the house. I'd take my kids to office hours to get help on a problem set if I was something I didn't understand. And I did environmental engineering. And it was really interesting because the chemical engineering department at Montana State did not want to do the environmental engineering program. So I ended up with a degree in civil engineering, which was just really I got caught up in like university politics at Montana State. Anyway, started this master. I guess my goal is be a lifelong learner and never give up. So I had everything done for this master's degree, and we got moved to Hong Kong. So finally, and then MSU said, you're done. You can't finish the degree. So I'm at the ski hill with my kids, back to the ski photos, and my professor from Montana State is sitting across the table from my kids' Montessori school teacher. Okay, we were living in Hong Kong. And Al Cunningham looks at me and goes, I want you to come back and finish that degree. I'll see you in class on Monday. So I was back in class to finish my water-based master's degree in environmental engineering before I had my tuberculosis testing, because I'd been living in Southeast Asia. So I was still getting like the logistics sorted. So wrapped up a master's in water And the way that relates to what I'm doing now is I have a couple of research laboratories that are for student-led research projects. And the kids probably, I'm going to guess, 60 to 70% of the kids are working on water-based research projects, whether it's in biogeosciences, molecular biology, water quality in the streams here in Hong Kong, microplastics in the ocean, all of these projects. And what we do is then we take them to conferences, and these kids get to present at AGU or ASM or AOGS. So I think I can if I look for themes in my life, one is lifelong learning, and B, it is interest in water, and it just continues to follow me. So it's, a funny pathway, but my master's degree was in my thesis for my master's degree was in phosphorus removal in constructed wetlands, and it was I loved it. So lifelong learning is a big part of that, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I really resonate with what Morgan said. Ask. What's the worst they can do if you write an email or you call somebody up? They're going to say no. Most of the time, they're going to say yes. So go with the positive on that. But yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think maybe one more step from what you just said too, Diana, is that you don't have to have it all figured out when you graduate. You can keep figuring it out. That's the fun part.
Well, and that's part of it, because when I started out, I was in Silicon Valley, and we were all making computer chips. And again, I was even part of the environmental club, or the environmental health and safety part of the facilities where I was at. I made sure that I was on those environmental committees for human safety in pretty toxic environments, but also just making sure that the water that was coming out of that factory met standards. So you can figure out your passion and the things that you're interested in a lot of different ways and now I love what I'm doing now. I should have been a teacher from the beginning, and maybe not an engineer. It's okay.
You got there. Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana. Okay, Kendra, do you have advice for your younger self or for someone who's currently an undergrad?
To go off of what was briefly touched on, just have an open mind and take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you, no matter if they align with what you think you want to do or not. A lot of the things that I did in college, especially at my time at WU, were super random, just because I was like, I've never done this before. I'm going to go try it out. Like applying to the bistro. I didn't have any skills, didn't have any background, got rejected at first, and then they came back and were like, actually, we want you, come work, right? So just because you get a no first doesn't mean you won't get a yes next time. So whether you know what you want to do or not, whether it aligns with what you think you want to do or not, like the biggest part around my success in my career is that the friends that I made along the way are the ones that actually helped me get the jobs. Some of the time it was people that I was colleagues with or I worked with at some point, but most of the time it's the friends who are like, hey, I know you well enough to know that this job is going to be good for you. Here, I'm going to pass it along to you. So don't be I don't know. As an anthropology major, what I learned really early on was people are just as afraid as you are or as intimidated as you are to make that first connection step. And so if you make that, they're more likely to meet you halfway. And so if you can get this, I was really anxious as a young human. And so if you could get past that anxiety, if it exists for you, and just be like, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Let's talk about it. Lots of people like to talk about what they're doing because they're doing what they love to do. And so they really enjoy talking about it. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to try things, even if they align or not. And yeah, take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you.
Yeah. And to go along with that, alumni who come back to be on panels also want to help you out. So don't hesitate to reach out to a Willamette alum. Okay. We have a question from Tynan. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. What kinds of connections or relationships are you seeing between public and private entities that are really moving the needle? And where do you think there are more opportunities for these type of collaborations?
This might be a very silly question for clarification, but what needle are we talking about? There are many needles, and so wanting to make sure I'm answering in the right thing.
I love that. Those critical thinking skills from Willamette. Tynan, can you elaborate, please?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't really have a specific needle in mind. I guess just I'm thinking about some specific examples of like time, examples where nonprofits or government organizations bring in private partners to like get a job done more quickly, or like times where nonprofits have had a seat at the table to make sure that things that are being done either by private entities or government entities are being done in a way that's mindful of the environment, or products or services that the government is sort of like promoting as being best practices, and how that kind of comes to be. Or so whether it's moving the needle in like individual behaviors or in sort of how projects are completed and executed, just curious, just interested in this like public-private sort of intersection and where that can be leveraged more, particularly as it pertains to improving the environment, because I think that's sort of a thing that I feel like is missed a lot of times. Curious if that brings anything up for you guys.
Well, thank you for giving us a little more info.
I don't know too much about this partnership, but there's an organization in Eastern Oregon called High Desert Partnership, and they do a lot of collaboration in like Eastern Oregon, Moala's like frontier area. And they're very good about not only working with public and private people, but just like getting projects done in a way that is really shaped towards like conservation and land stewardship. Currently, right now, I guess my organization is convening public and private sector, so government agencies and nonprofits all over the state monthly to kind of talk about the federal funding freeze and how we continue to work together to make sure that our rural spaces and communities are getting the resources and services they need, despite the fact that these federal dollars are no longer accessible for them. So we meet monthly with that one. My organization, this is kind of a plug, but we're hosting an event in Salem on the 17th of April called Rural Oregon Day, where we're bringing legislative representatives and senators to their bringing rural constituents to Salem so that they can meet with their representatives and then talk amongst each other with people at the Capitol, and then whoever shows up at this event to like work on collaborations and network and kind of hopefully get to a point where they can build connection with each other in order to then continue to build on those collaborations, because the key with collaborations is really getting to know each other and like building the trust between those entities. And so if we can start by connecting those organizations and public entities together, then that's then the key to getting to those collaborative efforts.
Great, thank you. Morgan or Diana, do you have ideas on public-private partnerships?
I think very little is going to get done in the foreseen future without these public-private collaborations, and it's really a great opportunity to drill down on them. So going back to not necessarily Hong Kong, I work with a lot of universities and things like that here, but in Montana, I'm closely related to a lot of the folks that are working on the American Prairie up in northeastern Montana, which is a really large reestablishment of prairie lands for bison and wildlife. And they eventually want to get to, I think it's like 5.3 million acres or something of conserved land in order to be able to while at the same time providing for the ranchers and the farmers that are up there that are, either cattle or wheat fields. And the only way they're going to be able to do it is to work really, really closely with the BLM, to work with the native the native populations that are up there, Fort Belknap and Fort Peck. And then they're on the grounds with the farmers and the ranchers, coming up with solutions that are also going to work for them. It's slow, it's expensive, it's hard work, but I just don't see any other way that you can do either a smaller project or one that's on this scale without a lot of collaboration. So it's And I think it requires, compromise on the part of everybody, and it requires patience. And it's hard because you see the detrimental effects of what's happening in the environment. And your first response or your first idea is to go in and try and fix it fast. And you're going to burn out if you do that. I think it really requires the long game.
Yeah, thank you for that. Morgan?
So I'm going to try and be succinct here because I think we could do an entire panel on government, regional, nonprofit, and private partnerships and the work that's happening across the state. So great question, and there is a lot to dig into. I think first I would say oftentimes we do talk about sectors of government being kind of siloed in the work that they do, and that can sometimes be true, but there's a lot more collaboration than I think is always identified or really talked about. And so I'm here to pitch that a little bit and say, I think across our levels of government, first off, we have state agencies with offices all across the state, and that is very intentional so that we can be providing direct customer service in community with folks who live in community and their kids go to school with everyone else. So if you're a state worker, you're part of community. And that is really helpful, not only to be able to provide that direct connection, but also to share information back to the leadership at that state agency, back to the governor's office, so that we can build more bridges. We also, within the governor's office, have what's called our regional solutions team. So we have a governor's office staff. I think we have 8 regions. So we have folks who are based in communities across the state, and they lead regional teams that are a mix of state folks from different agencies who are based in their region, as well as local government, local business partners, and kind of folks from and nonprofit partners. And they have kind of regional teams set up to do regional problem solving and economic development. And that's been a really successful model to be a conduit of information out to community, as well as information up to the governor's office and up to state government. And it's been neat. We've been able to do a lot of really great projects. I will also, as Kendra mentioned, High Desert Partnership does great work. And there's been a number of, especially in the forestry space, forest collaboratives that were brought together, bringing together federal, state, agency folks, as well as nonprofits and timber and lumber business folks to help build out plans for kind of regional management of different forest areas. So those have been really successful, and to talk through some really tough issues. One piece that came to mind is a couple of years ago, we've had a real shortage of certified well drillers in the state, and folks who need to get their well repaired. We're waiting months and months and months. And Kendra, you might have heard about this from folks down in Klamath. But we were able to partner with Klamath Community College for them to set up a degree program. And then we could put some state money there, work with KCC, and then work with local well drillers who are certified already to provide that apprenticeship training. And we were able to turn that around within a year to get more folks job opportunities and out on the ground providing tangible water quality resources that are necessary across the state. So that was really exciting. I would also say, we partner with, I'll honestly say, many of our regulated sectors, whether it's utilities or vehicle manufacturers, as we are looking at how to build in more clean energy, increase and improve vehicle standards. Those can be tough conversations, but we are working together with business, with industries to help figure out how to create compliance pathways and help push more sustainability in their work. So there can be a lot going on. I will highlight some of our state agencies. The Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, for example, does a lot of granting for on-the-ground watershed enhancement projects. They are lottery funded, and which I guess isn't super relevant, but other than their goal is just granting money out into community and working with farmers and ranchers to do ecosystem restoration programs and projects. And that's a great place to look if you're interested. So I could go on all day, but there's a lot of really neat partnerships. Also in the public health space, which I think of that there's such a nexus with environmental public health and how we are reacting to climate change, and the partnerships between state and county public health and our nonprofit partners, helping people respond to climate impacts, whether it's heating or cooling or water quality and having access to water. So there's been a lot of cross collaboration there.
Yeah. Thank you for that sort of big picture. I love that you can give us sort of that higher level perspective, maybe from your seat in the governor's office, of all the many things, the private-public partnerships that are going on. I can speak to the what Morgan mentioned from OWEB, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. A lot of the public-private partnerships that we see are through private, like farmers and ranchers with their private farming and ranching businesses, working with soil and water conservation districts, which are quasi-governmental organizations. They receive funding from state and local tax districts sometimes, but those soil and water conservation districts provide technical assistance to farmers and ranchers in order to help them with their soil management and restoration projects. And then they can also help them apply for funding from places like the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board or the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, who also provides technical assistance. So there's a lot of support structures, people figuring out which levers can you pull in order to make this work, in order to move the needle on water quality or restoration or whatever environmental regeneration that you're aiming towards. A lot of it is, you can do certain things with private industry, you can do certain things with nonprofits, you can do certain things with government, and you figure out which is the right lever to pull in any given situation or which sequence in some cases. So thank you for that question. That was a very fruitful question to ask. And our other question from Marva is for me on the current and projected results of the dam removals on the Klamath River. I don't know that I can speak to this a whole heck of a lot. Actually, Morgan might be able to speak to it better than I can, or Kendra, who's in Klamath. But our program focuses primarily on agricultural activities influencing water quality. And because the dam is not an agricultural activity, we don't think about it a heck of a lot, unfortunately. So I'll kick that to Morgan and to Kendra. Do you have any thoughts on the Klamath dam removals?
Go ahead, Kendra.
I don't have much, so if you feel like you've got some.
Yeah. It's been a really exciting project, and it took a really long time, but it's actually also a great example of a lot of different folks coming together between the feds and the state and the tribes and the local farmers and irrigators and business entities. There was a whole Klamath River Restoration Corporation pulled together so that they could leverage different funding streams and do all the planning on it. I think from an ecology standpoint, it's been a really exciting success. And there's a lot of fun videos on the internet. There's, I believe, Shane Anderson, who's a local filmmaker, is making a film about it. So fun to watch. A lot of the dam removal and just kind of watching how the river retakes its shape. And great partnership, I think, with the Klamath tribes. And I think also with the Yurok tribe. And so there's a ton of restoration work happening along the banks and the kind of now more exposed kind of lower riverbank area, and doing a lot of reseeding with native plants. So I think those are all kicking in and going really well. And so I would say I think it's been a really exciting success. And I believe last year we took out the last of the two. There might be one more. I think we got all of them out.
The Oregon ones.
Yes, the Oregon ones. Yes, to that end. Yes. And so it'll be fun to watch the fish returns for sure. But great point on centering collaboration between the state and the tribes. Oregon has 9 federally recognized tribes, many of which are confederations of regional, many tribes. And I will say our Department of Fish and Wildlife does a lot of work with the tribes around historic and I'm going to blank on the word, but kind of set fishing rights and hunting rights on tribal land and on non-tribal land, and does just a ton of collaboration as well on water quality and kind of watershed restoration work. And so we've been in lots of ongoing discussion and partnership, and just over time trying to get the tribes more of a seat at the decision-making spaces, at least from the state level.
Yeah.
Always more to do there.
Yeah, there is always more to do. I know most, if not all, of the state agencies have tribal liaisons, and the Confederated Tribes are in active communication with the Department of Environmental Quality about the water quality standards that the department sets for rivers, streams, lakes, and so on for the state. And they also hold seats they're invited to hold seats on most of the agricultural water quality advisory committees. So right now, I think we're in the conversation space. Anyways, I want to have one last question, and then unfortunately, we have to wrap up our time. We're having so much fun. So Seisha, would you like to be our last question of the evening?
I would be delighted. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you all for sharing your expertise tonight. It's great to dip into these sustainability gatherings and hear what folks are doing and thinking. My question, Kendra kind of touched upon it just in mentioning the rollbacks in federal funding. We're seeing rollbacks of all kinds at the federal level, dismantling of the Environmental Protection Agency, and on and on and on. So I'm curious what you all think from your point of view. How are communities locally in Oregon, or Oregon as a state, how can we be leading in this moment when we're not seeing the same kind of responsiveness that the federal government may historically have had on environmental issues? Thank you. Great question for 6 minutes left.
Such a good question that we should all be asking ourselves. Thank you for that, Seisha. I will say, Diana, don't feel like you can't jump in here if you have thoughts from abroad. Kendra, Morgan, Diana, anyone want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, so in specific, go ahead, Diana.
I was just going to say, I think on a global front, it doesn't matter if it's Oregon or if it's wherever it is. I think that there's that, my mantra on a daily basis is every job's a climate job. And so then that's kind of for me where personal responsibility comes in. So we may not have the funding that I just think it's coming up with those solutions that are either inside the box that we're not looking at or outside the box. And we really need to get creative. The beauty of a Willamette education and well-educated people that are passionate about what they're doing is we can figure this out. We can run circles around these people. They just don't know it yet.
I love that vote of confidence. Thanks, Diana. Kendra?
You've got to be optimistic. That's just that's my modus operandus. Otherwise, the other options aren't good. So that's how I manage my day.
I think as environmentalists, we inherently have to be optimistic. Kendra?
I think, at least in the rural conversations I've been having, a lot of it is around how do we as rural serving organizations or people who care about rural spaces in Oregon really come together to kind of hone the skills that we have in order to, when we can finally move forward, we can do it, right? So it's a lot around how do we pull in our own resources? How do we create stronger networks of services in these areas? How do we, on the ground, create this network of partnership and collaboration, really, and connection to be able to do the work still? It's really hard. There's a lot of complicated things and complex scenarios that play into it. A lot of our partners are getting money from the EPA, and they no longer have those millions of dollars that they were planning on using for gigantic projects, right? And so in this moment, there's a lot of organizations that may or may not exist in the next 6 months, depending on where they can find funding. And so really it's about, I guess, in my line of work, it's like, how do we reteach or reframe or look at connecting and human connection and relationship building in a slightly different way than we have been over the last 5 years, to be able to trust in each other, to be able to then like move things forward and like cover gaps and recognize your assets and create this service structure in your local areas to be able to move it forward. Again, super big conversations, and definitely there's a lot more than just like be friends with each other, but the conversations are happening, which I think is a good start.
So in a way that comes down to being your capacity building kind of as you retrench, and the education piece of it. And, I think that ends up being a big part of it then, is what are you going to, build that capacity, and start with young people too. I mean, that's kind of where I'm happy in the K-12 space, because you really realize that, you can have a lot of influence.
Yeah, thank you. Morgan, you got thoughts on this one?
I don't know where to start with my thoughts. It is a challenge. We have a lot of state programs and a lot of partner programs that have been in an on and off cycle of having their grants available or not, which is challenging just from a workflow and workforce standpoint, and feeling like opportunity to get the work done that's been planned for. And I think it's challenging. We don't have about a third of our state budget is federal funds. And so we're scenario planning on all the different areas that we may be scaling in different ways. And we don't have the state resources to backfill everything that is federally funded. So it is a challenging dynamic. I think to add on to the partnership component, we are in close communication with many, many other states, and to be unified and share intelligence and share how other states are able to navigate and leverage through the current dynamic. I don't know that I have like super hopeful words at the moment, because we're just trying to sort out as the landscape changes day by day. And depending on, we've also had a number of grants come back online. So I think it is helpful. I will always say advocacy to the congressional delegation to help keep encouraging that the core work and the relevant work product is able to continue is helpful.
Oh. And I'll add too, one of the things, the program that I'm within is a regulatory program. And so that's even a different conversation because we get our ultimate authority from the Clean Water Act. But I think one of the things that I learned working for a state agency is that all of our programs are directly out of the legislature. And the legislator decides what the people of Oregon want, and they say, okay, agencies, you do this now. And we're a state of 4 million people. You can actually have quite a voice if you are very communicative with your representatives, and if you're really active in issues that really matter to you. And we're in the middle of a legislative session right now. So that awareness for me that, this program that I now work in came about because a lot of farmers were really keen on seeing this legislation happen in 1993, and here we are still doing that. It was really a shift in perspective for me, and I didn't realize just how impactful the actions of an engaged citizenry could be. Again, embarrassing because I went to Willamette and it was right next to the Capitol. I should know this. But I take solace in sort of having Oregon values represented in Oregon state government by people having that access, right? Again, 4 million people, you can have quite a significant impact on the way things shape up in our state. Yeah. So I don't know if we solved all the world's problems, Seisha. We could keep going on this one for quite a while, but I appreciate the question because I think this is one that it would be beneficial for everyone to be asking, what do we do now? So thank you for that. And thank you, all of you, for being here. I've been very inspired by this conversation. It's always great to be in the company of amazing women doing amazing things. So thank you to Diana and Morgan and Kendra for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with us. I learned a lot about trusting the process, being a lifelong learner, being okay with rejection and keeping going, and coming back to those things that are your core values and the things that you really hold near and dear. And as Diana pointed out, we have to be optimists. So we'll wrap this up, but I want to give a big thank you to Sayer and to Eric for helping us host this on behalf of Willamette University. Thank you for providing the Zoom communications and event infrastructure, and just one big final round of applause to our panelists and to our Willamette folks. Thank you all so much, and thanks for joining.